Adventures of Lolo Trilogy. These are puzzle games. They feature a story and skill building. These games were originally released for the Nintendo Entertainment System and Famicom. Nowadays, you can play these on various platforms, including a web browser. If you and I are somewhat of the same type of gamer, then yes, you should play it. Although I would suggest you hear me out for the first couple of minutes of the review because there's something that you should know about these games. But if you just want to be surprised, then go ahead and enjoy these games. Alright, so Lolo started off as Eggerland series for the MSX and MSX2 in Japan and Europe. As the years went by, they moved on to the Nintendo Famicom. Where's North America, you ask, right? Well, that's where Adventures of Lolo comes in. The first game in this trilogy came out in 1989 for the NES, and then things got a little complicated. Now I ask you to please pay attention as this can get quite confusing at first. Adventures of Lolo gets released in North America on the year 1989. This version of Lolo was based on a set of mixed stages from the previous Eggerland series. Adventures of Lolo gets released in Japan on the following year, 1990. This version got a totally different set of new original stages and was much harder than the North American version. Adventures of Lolo 2 gets released in North America on the same year, 1990. This version of the game was again based on a set of stages from the Eggerland series as well as the Japanese version of Lolo. Adventures of Lolo 2 gets released in Japan on the same year, 1990. And once again, it's an entirely new game with a set of new original stages. Now, Adventures of Lolo 3 gets released in North America in late 1991. This version consists of mostly new original stages rather than using stages from the previous games in the series. Adventures of Lolo 3 was never released in Japan because it's Lolo 2 but different stages. What the hell is going on here? It's as if they're taking lessons from Super Mario Bros. 2, where it's the same name but completely different game. I'm going to guess and say the reasoning behind it must also be the same. If you don't know, Super Mario Bros. 2 in Japan was much harder than the first game. Nintendo thought it would be too difficult for the audience outside of Japan, therefore giving the rest of the world something totally different from the original Super Mario Bros. 2. Eventually, the game would finally be released to the rest of the world under the name Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels. The version we got came out in Japan under the name Super Mario USA. Now, Europe got the North American versions in 1991 and 1992, but I also read that they got the Japanese releases as well. If that's true, then they got the best of both worlds, which is awesome. I should probably mention that there's also an Adventures of Lolo on the Game Boy. It came out in 1994 only in Japan and Europe. It didn't reach North America, probably because of all the confusion that's going on at HAL Laboratories with the NES releases. Anyway, yeah, 5 different games within 3 titles on the NES. Crazy. I hope you understood all of that and we can finally move on to the review of the game. The story is simple. Lala gets kidnapped by King Edgar. Lolo has to rescue Lala from King Edgar by entering his castle, and the only way to reach him is to solve his puzzles. Lolo 3 is different though. You can play both Lolo or Lala, and the story is about just stopping King Edgar from doing bad things. The gameplay is very simple. You control Lolo and you have to collect hearts to open the chest, grab the jewel, and go on to the next level. The further you go, the harder it gets. There are various enemies and each one has their own way of blocking or attacking you. The enemies are Snaky, a cute harmless monster. Leaper, when you come in contact with him, he will fall asleep. Rocky, he will dash towards Lolo if he sees him. He can block you, but he can't hurt you. Gold, he is sleeping at first, but will wake up when all the hearts are collected. He will then shoot a flame when Lolo passes in front of him. Alma, he will constantly roll around and chase Lolo. Skull, another one who is sleeping at first and wake up when all the hearts are collected, but he will chase Lolo non-stop. Medusa, sleeping until Lolo walks on any of his lanes. He will shoot Lolo unless something is in the way. This one reminds me of the Sleeping Shack meme. Dawn Medusa. Same thing as Medusa, but he is constantly moving up and down or left and right. If he sees Lolo, he will throw a sword at him. There are also power-ups that will help you solve the level if you manage to get the power-up. There will be times where you have to collect enough hearts to enable Lolo to use them. The power-ups are magic shots. This is the primary power-up in the game series. Some hearts will contain magic shot ammo. Magic shots will turn an enemy into an egg. Once the enemy is an egg, you can either shoot an another magic shot to throw them out of the stage for a limited time, and then the enemy will respawn again. Or you can push and move the egg and relocate that enemy somewhere around the map. The enemies will hatch after a few seconds. You can even push the egg in the water and use it as a bridge or even write on it. Bridges allows you to place a bridge where needed. One-way passes. The direction of the one-way pass style can be changed with this power-up. And hammer. This power-up will break and destroy rocks. There will be some levels that will give you these power-ups in your inventory, giving you the hint that you will have to use this in order to beat the level. That's pretty much the gameplay of these games. With that being said, onto the skill building. This is a puzzle game. There are two skills involved here. One clearly being critical thinking, and the other is execution. The more you play this game, the more you realize that you can really think far and deep to a point where you're solving the level in your head. Execution is actually executing your plan correctly. If this game had a timer, I would say reactions as well, but it doesn't have a timer at all. You can stare at the screen as much as you want so that you're able to think and see how you can solve the level without being rushed. Enemies will not move until you move first. Of course, there will be times where you may be rushed, but that's because of certain timings, whether it be from enemies moving or just the egg hatching. This is all execution though. These are great puzzle games. I beat all of them except for Lolo 3. I'll admit it, this game beat me up. A game for the NES that came out in late 1991, which has a file size of 256 kilobytes. Beat me up. The game doesn't tell you some tips that you're supposed to do. For example, warp holes. If you shoot an enemy off the stage with your magic shots and stay on the tile where it was sitting, sometimes the enemy will respawn on the default location or another location entirely. Yeah, how are you supposed to find this out in the early 90s? Critical thinking. Lolo 3 teaches you this, but the tech was needed to be used in Lolo 1 and 2 as well. What you're seeing right now is the level that I stomped on. If you managed to beat this game, congratulations! If you haven't yet and are considering on playing Lolo, I hope you beat where I left off. I would suggest you start off with the North American version, then Japan for each title. You know, I'm looking at this stage, and at the time I'm recording this, I still can't figure it out. My problem is the Medusas at the bottom. I will eventually go back and beat it one day. Anyway, that's all you need to know about this game. Remember, gaming should be fun, not hard.